Alrighty, good morning, everyone. Happy Saturday morning. We will get started in just a second. We're going to show a little video.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's session. We are PreMed CC, a student-led organization established in the fall of 2021. Our goal as an organization was to create an online community for pre-medical students at community colleges and universities with the hope of guiding the next generation of diverse and inclusive physicians.
And while we advertise our organization as being for community college students, our events are open to anyone. We realize that finding guidance and mentorship in a pre-med journey can be especially challenging for first-generation pre-med students, people that lack the financial resources, or just those that do not know people in the medical field.
One of the best parts about our events is that they're virtual, so you can do it from the comfort of your own home. We typically have events on Fridays from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. PST, and on Saturdays from 10 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. PST.
If you aren't able to attend the event, all our sessions are uploaded on our YouTube channel. Many of our sessions will end with Q&A with our speakers. Any questions that you have can be put in the Q&A section on Zoom, and our team members will read them and have them answered.
After you have attended our event, you can log on to our website and complete the quiz, which will contain questions pertaining to our session today.
If you score 70% or higher on the quiz, you'll be awarded a 2-hour mentorship certificate to show that you attended our session today.
If you want to stay connected with our upcoming events or want to tell your pre-med friends about PreMed CC, you can find us on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok at PreMed CC.
Dr. Denise Martinez is the Associate Dean of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion and serves as Professor of Family Medicine at UC Riverside School of Medicine. Before her tenure at UC Riverside, Dr. Martinez was recognized as the youngest medical school assistant associate dean in the country, spending 12 years at the University of Iowa School of Medicine in leadership and serving the last 2 as Associate VP for Health Parity for the University of Iowa Healthcare. Dr. Martinez's dedication to DEI and health disparities has garnered awards, including the 2023 Distinguished Alumni Award for Early Career Achievement at the University of Iowa. In 2022, she was also honored with the National Latino Medical Student Association's Faculty of the Year Award for her unwavering commitment to mentoring students, her tireless efforts to reduce health disparities, and her innovative work in creating pathway programs. She has also been named as one of the 100 Inspiring Hispanic Latinx Scientists in America by Cell Mentor, and previously awarded 40 under 40 for minority health by the National Minority Quality Forum. We are excited to have you today, Dr. Martinez. I will turn it over to you.
Awesome. I'm so happy to be here. I was just telling the team, and first of all, this team is amazing. I just am always just like so incredibly impressed with this program and all of the work that you all do. It is truly remarkable. So I love following your socials too and seeing all the amazing speakers you have. So thank you for all the work that you do, because I know it's meaningful and I know it means a lot to the folks who are here today. So yeah, let me go ahead and get started. Let me see. I'm on my husband's computer, so let me see if I can find my PowerPoint. So let me see if I'll pull that up real quick. And y'all can see this okay, and let me start it. Sorry. Okay, so y'all can see this okay? Very good. So, and some of this is a little bit interactive. Mindy and Mandy, if there are things that roll through, people ask or put in comments during the oh, perfect. So that is really helpful. I'm going to go ahead and get started. So my journey, and also the other thing I was explaining this morning is, on this Saturday, this is just real life. I was hustling to get my son off to his first baseball game and trying to get everything. And I'm on my husband's computer, so I don't have my filter, but I, again, very happy to be here. So if you're like, oh, it's a little rough today, just know that. I love talking a little bit about my journey and then sharing all the things that I wish I knew when I was in your shoes. Like many folks, I am the first doctor in my family, the first person to ever do anything like this. And there was so much I did not know. And there's so much more I know now. And so, it's really important that, and I know you all know this, that, and many of you are probably doing this to people who are even a little bit farther behind you, that it's really important that we share our knowledge. And so that's one of the things I most love, because I want us to all be successful. So now, yes, I'm at University of Riverside School of Medicine, which I'm super excited about. And I'll share a little bit more about that. So for me, my own journey, again, first doctor in my family. I grew up primarily in California, and also in some in Seattle as well, in the Inland Empire. So I'm really happy to be back here in California. I've been here at UCR for about 6 months, after being at University of Iowa for almost, actually for over 15 years. So it was a while. And so it's a real honor to be back. So usually I start off with, when do you think that you first wanted to be a doctor? And imagine your mind. Some people it was college, some people it was way before that. And for me, it was right here. So this was me when I was, if you could guess, 5 years old. So this is the same age as my son now. And my mom was pregnant with my little baby sister. And I thought, oh my gosh, there's this like doctor who's going to bring this baby into the world. How cool is that? That sounds like the best job in the world. That's something I think I want to do. But I didn't really quite believe it. And it took a lot for me to get there. So how do you go from this to this? And this is when I'm a little bit more doctored up. So I wanted to be a doctor for a very long time. And as I usually share with folks, I was a pretty decent high school student. I did decently well in high school. And I don't know if you ever feel like this, like I didn't really study that much in high school. I didn't work that hard in high school. And then I got to college and decided I was going to be pre-med. And one of the things that I felt like, at least at my school, it felt like everybody was pre-med, and it was very scary and very intimidating. And I started my first class, which was general chemistry, which was lovely, right? And guess what? I did not do very well in general chemistry. And so, the first thing, I was pretty disappointed and pretty discouraged. And my pre-med advisor invited me to his office. I went to college in Seattle at a small liberal arts school. And he had been a pre-med advisor for a million trillion years. And he said, I just want you to know that there's really no way you'll ever be a doctor. And I'm like, wow, okay. But look at me now. So, those things happen. It's more common. I don't know if any of you have felt super discouraged or somebody saying that you can't do this, but boo on them, right? So I kind of still, though, kind of believed him too. So I became a secret pre-medical student, really kind of hiding out and maybe still like being a bio major and hoping that maybe I could still potentially get there. But I ended up doing a pathway program, which I think many of you might be aware of. So these are, programs like this, that help folks, give people the tools to, potentially get into medical school. And so I did a summer program. Now it's called the summer SHPP, the Summer Health Professions Education Program. So I did that first summer at the University of Washington. And there was like a flyer in this is like pre-big internet days. That's how old I am. And I took a piece of the flyer and I was like, I looked it up and on the internet. And I said, okay, I guess I'm going to apply to this. And I was shocked because I got into the summer program, especially after being told I'd never be a doctor. And the first thing I thought to myself is probably nobody applies to this program, because how the heck did I get in? Because I was feeling the super imposter syndrome. And then the first day of the program, a dean like myself, the same exact job I have right now, stood up in front of the entire class and said, we chose every single one of you because we know that one day you're going to be physicians. And the first thing I said was, wow, they lie here. they're liars in this program. Oh my gosh, this is terrible. But honestly, by like the end of the 6 weeks, I really felt like, okay, I think I could go to medical school. And actually, I applied even just that next cycle. I got into 7 medical schools. And so, that we'll talk more about that. You can do this, but you can absolutely do this. So I did take a gap year because I ended up doing that it was actually 2 cycles later I applied. But I took a gap year, which was amazing. I highly recommend it. Everybody should take at least one, in my opinion, at least. That's my own thoughts. And I obviously had some big failures on my way. I did pretty terribly, ended up my first freshman and sophomore year, but was still able to get into really good medical schools. And I've had some great successes. So, I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. Okay. And so that summer program that helped get me into medical school, when I became a dean of DEI at the University of Iowa, I was able to bring that same exact summer program there and wrote the grant. And so I was the person that told 80 students each summer that I 100% believe and know, and they were chosen because we know that you guys will be doctors one day. And so to be that full circle is just, literally the best part of my job. And so working with students, helping with pathways is there's a lot of stuff I do, but this is the most fun for sure. So next, can you guys see this? Okay. So next, I have 10 lessons for you this morning, and we'll go into depth in some of them more than others. But, the first lesson I have for all of you is the road is not always straight. And many of you hopefully believe that, right? Some of you are coming from community college, which is an amazing path into medical school and a very viable path into medical school. Some of you are in, maybe a university or college right now, or some of you are maybe thinking about going back to college after, doing a job and deciding you want to be a doctor. But I always thought, and it sort of feels like pre-med advisors, plus their little hearts, think that, only advise that there's like one way to do it. And there's like one timeline to do it, that you have to like do these classes in this super specific order. Then you have to apply at the beginning, start thinking about the beginning of your junior year. So you go exactly straight through. And that's like the only way that can be done. That is garbage. It is not true. I would say the vast majority of students don't do it that way. And people take multiple years off. People have careers and then they come back. People do post-bac programs, which are also amazing. So like maybe a year, sometimes 2 years, to help strengthen their application. And so all of those ways are 100% valid to get into medical school. And I think as pre-med, students, we compare ourselves to everybody all the time. And everybody always thinks that everybody else is doing better than them. Also lies. Because I have a box of Kleenex in my office. And plenty of students come crying in my office. And always feel this way. But, some of even the top, like crazy top students are feeling this way too. Everybody feels like that. At the comparison game, there's never a winner. So just don't do it. Everybody's on their own path. And the path isn't straight. And if it's perfectly straight for you, great. But I would say that's not the norm. And so let's normalize that. The next thing that I wish I knew when I was in your shoes, lesson 2, is that life does not start at the end. Life does not start at the end. So many folks, I talk to students all the time, who are like 18 years old and 19 years old. And, they think, oh my gosh, by the time I get through college, and then what's after college, right? We have residency. And by the time, medical school, sorry, my brain is not functioning as well Saturday morning. So next is medical school. And then next you have, or a post-bac program or something else potentially. And then you have residency. So, there's a lot of years to kind of get where you're at. And for me, when I was done, how old was I? I was 29 when I finished everything. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be 29 years old. That is so old. Now I'm like, oh my gosh, I wish I was 29 years old. That would be amazing. Um, but I thought like, oh my, I have to like delay my life so much until I'm done with everything. And that's when life starts. And that is also lies, not true. Like, do not waste your 20s or whatever age you are right now, or teens or 20s or further beyond, thinking that you are holding off on your life right now. Life is now, and you should be living your life as it is now. Granted, and there are fun things in life now that you don't have to necessarily delay. Like, people fall in love on the journey. People fall out of love, including myself, and then fall in love again. You can get married if you want to do something like that. You can have kids if you want to do something like that. You can travel if you want to do that. Those are all things that I have done in the process. And so don't think that you're delaying your life. Like, life is literally right now, and you will be living your life through it. It's just a part of what your life is, but you're not stopping your life and then waiting to live it. Life is like now. Don't waste it. Which brings me to my next lesson is that you can do this. You can do this. I truly have no doubts that the students and folks that I meet on a regular basis can make it into medical school. And I mean, I'm not lying about that. And after, I guess over almost 13 years of being a medical school dean now, I can say that with some confidence. And it does take a lot of hard work. It does not happen magically, but I believe that everybody has it within them to complete it and get it done. But there's a couple of caveats to that. And to be honest, like, I know this is going on probably YouTube, but I'll just say it out loud. That one of the things that, was shocking to me when I met a lot of really fancy doctors and people who are kind of super famous or, things like that in medicine, I thought that everybody was going to be so extraordinary, so brilliant, so smart. And those people exist. There's no doubt about that. And then I was kind of shocked at how like mid so many people are too. And so many students I like meet on a regular basis are actually extraordinary and don't even know it, like actually extraordinary. And so you can do it. You can absolutely do this if you want to. And let me give you that real encouragement because I believe it. But it takes a lot of hard work, which you all know already, and you have to do it with the right motivation. Like I would say that's probably the most important thing is that it's done with the right motivation. What are some bad reasons to go into medicine or want to go into medicine? I don't know if you can throw it in the comments or not. Money. Yep, that is one. And I won't lie, I love my pool in my house. Like we live a nice life. I own a boat, another thing I love. Go on vacation. But I'm like, oh my gosh, the money does not give you a little warm hug when you're on your 24th hour of call taking care of patients. And so go walk yourself over to the business school like my husband did and go into business if you're interested in the money. Prestige, ego, yes, that it is fancy when I tell people I'm a doctor, but yeah, not the best reason to do it. Absolutely. There's kind of one other big reason. I wonder if anybody will get it. Probably the worst one. Yes, you got it, Kim, because your parents want you to. So yeah, no, yep, not a good thing. So, and it's hard because I think for a lot of folks, people who come from immigrant backgrounds or, I come from an underrepresented background. One of the first times I ever saw my father cry was at my medical school graduation because he was so proud. It means a big deal to folks. And, your parents want, everybody says, I want my kid to be a doctor, whatever. But if it's their dream and not your dream, I've seen it happen. I've had friends drop out of medical school because they realized it wasn't their dream. I've had people who dropped out of residency, which is even worse. You've gone through the whole process and then you're in all this debt and then you drop out because you realize it's not really your dream. It's like your family's dream or your community's dream. And so it truly has to be your dream. That will be the only thing that will keep you through. So, very briefly, what are some good reasons to want to go into medicine? Yeah, like it seems so simple, but to help others, like if you genuinely like helping humanity, if you genuinely want to improve the quality of individuals or a group of people's lives, all of those types of things. If you like to learn, if you like physiology and the body works, if you like fulfillment, all of those things, those are all excellent reasons to pursue medicine. So I just want you to know you can totally do it, but you need to be doing it for the right reasons. Okay. Which brings me to next. You cannot do it by yourself. Nobody can go into medical school by themselves. You have to have mentors. And believe me, we can tell if you haven't. We can tell in your application. I'm on the admissions committee and we read applications and we're like, oh, they did not get any help. We can tell, Or I can read letters of recommendation and instantly know, ooh, they did not have mentors. This is not a very personal letter. This person doesn't know really who this person is. It's nice, but it's not a great letter. And so you can't and plus you just need guidance. You can't do it by yourself. You have to find mentors and you have to use them. And the good news is that there are actually a lot of people who are willing to help you. But I do want to make the caveat, like there's never going to be like that one perfect mentor, like the person who is like helps you with your family drama and then also helps you pick out the best class order for school and helps you figure out the best lab for research. Like there's never one. You need often like a whole group, and some of them you might like have a touchy-feely relationship with, and some of them just might be strictly business. Some of them might like look like you and have similar identities, and somebody will be nothing like you as far as their background and identity. But it's actually helpful to have all of the above. You need people to help you. Okay. It's key, it's critical, and I 100% would not be here unless I had that. The first person which was in that summer program, who told me that I was going to be a fabulous doctor was Dr. David Acosta, who is now the Chief Diversity Officer over all medical schools, the AAMC. And so he's been my mentor for well over 20 years now. And I need him. I still call him, and other folks in my life still, at this point in my life, and my mentors have changed over time, but those things are critical to your success because it's really hard to do it on your own. And I would argue it's impossible. So people are like, how do you find a mentor? So we're going to talk a little bit more about that today because I get a lot of feedback around this. You have to network, and you have to figure out how to become an excellent networker. This is something I won't lie, I'm fabulous at it. And it's taken time. It's not something that you always know innately. And it's not something, it's people meet me and sometimes they're like, oh my God, she's so extroverted. I am actually not. I love people, but like going up to people I don't know, having conversations, introducing myself, isn't like a natural thing for me. It is for some folks, but I've had to learn over time that this is critical to myself and my success and my, all of those different things. So I've gotten much better, and I'm actually really good at it. So, and that's probably a big reason why I'm so successful. Half of life is who you know and who likes you, even probably a little more than that. Half of life is who you know and who likes you, which kind of sucks, but it's also important. And so when you're in different settings, when you are at school with professors, or if you're at a, pre-medical fair, or you're at a, any kind of opportunity to meet folks who might be able to be helpful to you, you should be thinking, who in this setting should I meet? Who can I network with? Who can I introduce myself to? And I still do that. I just, again, joining the University of California system, I was just at a conference, a couple of weeks ago up in Northern California with all the other folks like me. And the whole time I'm like, oh, I'm about to make half these people my new BFFs because we're going to need each other to be able to work together. And they don't know me, but it's on me to figure that out and help us create those connections. So knowing how to introduce yourself, which is a big thing, which we'll talk about here in a second, knowing how to ask good questions so that you are able to get that connection is really important. So we'll talk more about that as well. Sharing about yourself, and we'll just talk about that. Asking for opportunities. So if you're asking for a shadowing opportunity, an opportunity to meet sometime so that you can get to know each other a little bit better, or asking for, potentially to work on a research team, what is the worst thing that people can say to you? What is the worst thing that can happen? They say no, right? If that's the worst thing, exactly. Thank you, Mindy. That is the worst thing. And if they say no, oftentimes it's not personal. I have students all the time asking me to shadow. I just happen to have a very limited amount of space. I don't do as much clinical practice anymore. And so sometimes it's like, I unfortunately get back with me maybe in 6 months because I just don't have any, time right now because of the the little bit of clinical time I have, I already have learners who are with me. And so that's not personal. That has nothing to do with people personally. And so sometimes when people say, no, you can't take it personal, and you just have to keep asking for opportunity. If you're shy, like, I am naturally, get over it. This is your future we're talking about. And sorry to say, it is kind of what it is. And it takes practice, but it's something that everybody's capable of doing. But overzealous can be rough too. I've had a couple students shadow me or other things, and they just talk. And I love it. But I actually have been in a couple clinics before, I literally can't see the patients because they just won't stop. And so there's this fine balance of, back and forth communication, and nobody's going to hold your hand through this. You need to do it on your own. Okay. So let's be a little bit more specific. So you need to know your 1-minute story. So you have to have an elevator pitch. You've probably heard of that before. So the idea of an elevator pitch is on the time that you go onto an elevator, that you'll be able to, say a bit about yourself to somebody. So 30 seconds, 45 seconds, that sort of thing, even less sometimes. And so if I was to introduce myself, as a student, I would say, my name is Denise Martinez. I'm a junior at the University of California, Riverside. I'll be the first person ever in my family to go into medicine. I'm really passionate about care for the underserved. It's something that is very personal to me because of my own family experiences. And I'd love to talk to you more. Ta-da! You have to be able to just kind of rattle off. When I ask people, tell me about themselves, I get so many, especially from undergraduate students, I get so many deer in the headlight looks. And I'm like, no. You need to have this prepared. And you need to be able to quickly and easily talk about yourself. And I know it feels weird, but doctors are very good at this. And so you just have to learn how to practice it. And so what is your background? What are your interests? All of those types of things. The other thing is that when you introduce yourself, you need to do a little bit of research and maybe points of connection. So for example, if somebody's trying to connect with me, what should you do? You Google me. There's a million things about me on the line, like for most doctors. You Google me, about me, you read about me and say, oh, Dr. Martinez has worked in free clinics. Dr. Martinez has done this or whatever, And you'd say, oh, I love the work that you're doing in free clinics. Can you tell me a little bit more? And I'm like, oh, you like me? Now I like you back. Let's have a conversation. You know what I mean? And it takes literally 30 seconds for me to quickly look up bios of folks in the room and figure out who they are so I can ask better questions. So let's talk more about that. So asking good questions to folks that you meet. Asking good open-ended questions. Dr. Martinez, I love that you do family medicine. Can you tell me a little bit more how you made that decision? Yes, of course. I too share your passions. I too am interested in care for the underserved. I'd be really interested why this is one of your passions as well. Yes, of course. Let's talk. Don't make questions defensive. This is a problem I've met with a couple of students that I'm like, you're literally making my palms sweat. So I've had students who come up to me and said, actually, this was in a mock interview. And they're like, well, I read about you because they did their research, which was awesome. And they said, I see you do, student-led free clinics. Can you tell me why you do it like this and not like this? And I'm like, woo, like it made me feel defensive and stuff like that. And I'm like, why are you an expert on free clinics? So like you always want to put things in a positive way when you're trying to connect with folks, because otherwise it does not come off as a pleasant interaction, even if you're not meaning it to be, if that makes sense. And then you should always know what level of question is. So, unfortunately, I'm so fortunate that I have this opportunity, but my time is pretty limited just in life. When you're a doctor and a mom and, all a wife and my parents live with us and I'm seeing clinic patients and I'm a dean and I'm doing a million projects because I'm passionate. And so if you have just like 5 minutes with me, it's an opportunity to connect. But I've had students in those 5 minutes they have with me say, oh, do you know what time the next class is? Am I the right person to ask that question to? No, look it up. I'm sure that's in your email. Or like if somebody says, like if I, to my boss, Dean D's, if I said, oh, Dean D's, do you know where the paper is for this next meeting? Do you think that's who the right person I should be to be asking that question to when I have limited time and connection space? No, it makes you look bad, to be perfectly honest, because you don't know, you didn't ask your friend, ask your classmate, ask, your email, look it up, But also when you have limited time with certain folks you're trying to connect with, you want to make sure you're asking the right questions to the right person. Fortunately, I have an executive assistant. If there's certain specific that has to do with me, that maybe would be a better question for them, email them and ask them, you have to just understand who to ask the right questions to, if that makes sense. So here's an example. And I don't know if you all have your smartphones on with you, because I was trying to put her bio into the slide, but it's so big. I just wasn't able to. She's so amazing. This is my boss. This is Dean Dees. She is the dean of UCR School of Medicine. She's one of the first women of Black identity to ever be a dean of a medical school, which is, she talks about it as both being amazing, which it is, like she's my hero, but also unfortunate that it's been taken this long for someone like these things to happen. But she is a child psychiatrist and she's amazing. And so if you had the opportunity to meet Dean Dees, who's extremely busy, so even I only get a couple minutes with her, if you were sitting next to her at an event, and you had 3 minutes to talk to her to make a connection, what would you do? What questions would you ask her? So my suggestion would be take out your smartphone, do a quick Google search right now. We're going to take 30 seconds to do that. And I want to see in the chat or other people ask what questions would you ask her if you met her? Okay, go. So Dean D is UCR School of Medicine. Okay, you probably had a brief look. 30 seconds sometimes is all that's needed. You don't have to read the novel. What questions would you ask her quickly? you're a dean. What is one of the, you're a dean, I would say you're a dean of a medical school. I would love to know what is the most challenging part of your job? It's a really big job. That's exactly what I would say to her. Yes. What else? Dean Dees, I know that you've done, so again, I love the questions, and then watch how I say them, because I say them with a little bit of sugar. But the next question that somebody wrote is, what are obstacles that you had to get where you're at? So I'd say, Dean Dees, you've done amazing. You just have so many amazing accomplishments. What are some of the obstacles that you noticed when you were, on your journey to get into medicine or into leadership where you're at? So again, doing it with a sprinkle, a little sugar, and then ask your question. Oh, yes, I know that you're a psychiatrist. What got you interested in being a psychiatrist? She's a child psychiatrist as well. Like, how did you get interested particularly in child psychiatry? How has becoming the first female dean helped you support other women? I probably would ask it, yeah, you have so many opportunities. I know as a woman dean, which is not something that is so common. How have you used that to support other women? 100%, absolutely. So all good questions. So these are things that you could ask D&Ds, and those would be appropriate. And that is what I would expect from a student who is trying to connect. So next is, so when you meet contacts, you should have a strategy for keeping in contact with folks. Emails, in-person meetings. I always prefer in person if you're local. Personally, it's much more fun than Zoom, but sometimes Zoom is a necessary thing, which is totally fine as well. But I would say, if you find somebody is your mentor. Let's say you took organic chemistry, not my favorite thing, but let's say you take organic, you really connected with the professor, and you think you want them to write a letter for you, in a couple of years for medical school, then you can't just not talk to them for 2 years. Like, you need to keep going back, go into office hours, do maybe once a quarter or once a semester, depending on your system, email and saying, hey, I just want to give you a brief update into my life. Would love to catch up briefly with you during your office hours. All of those ways to continue to reach back, continue to build relationships, take good notes, ask good questions to the folks who are, potentially your mentors. And again, if you find a pre-health advisor who's really excellent and really solid, that's also really important as well. If you don't have a pre-med advisor that is really supportive of you, find a new one. And sometimes that takes going to another institution and sort of being willing to ask for mentorship from somebody else if you don't have a robust cadre of pre-health advisors that are helpful. So, and then I have a couple more networking things, and then we'll keep going. But emails, this is my pet peeve, so this is why I'm writing about this. But I won't lie, I get a bunch of bad emails from students over the year, and it's not because they're bad people. It's just that they don't know how to write a good email. Now we have ChatGPT, which is, there's lots of tools to help you figure out how to write a really excellent email. And so know that emails are always a more formal form of communication. So even if you know somebody really well and have a close relationship, like the way I would text somebody is different than the way I would email them, even if we have a close relationship. You don't want it to be too long, because after more than paragraph 1, I just don't have the time. If it is more than paragraph 1, then this should be a meeting or a conversation. And no text language, proper titles, gratitude, 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 gratitude. So every email, every interaction must have gratitude in it. So let me show you a perfect email. Oh, also email signature. If you don't have an email signature, you must. If you don't have an email signature, you must. And then there's probably some good examples here, and you can put them automatically through that, or in your email. I just kind of made one up this morning. This is like a made up one if I was a student, but put, what school I go to, what class, pronouns if you want, a leadership thing that you do. But when you're emailing, especially a professor or dean, somebody you're trying to connect with as a mentor, you have to have an email signature. there's probably things online to help you with that. So actually, this is an old email, but Marissa, so Dr. Robinson, she's a family doctor in Seattle now, and she is one of my all-time favorite students. She's literally like family. And this was an email that she sent me. And so we were close. Like she'd come over to my house and just hang out on Saturdays and watch, basketball with my husband and like hang out, like she was part of the family. She's from Jamaica. She didn't have, family in the States. So she became part of our family as a medical student. And so, but she sent me a formal email because she's super smart when she was asking for a letter. And so this is what it was a great email. So it says, "Dear Dr. Martinez, I would like to thank you for agreeing to write a letter of recommendation for my application for residency in family medicine. Applications open for submission on this date in September 17th. This is an old email. And early submission most optimizes my chance to gain interviews at my top programs. My goal is to submit my application in entirety on September 13th. If you have any questions or require more information to complete the letter, please do not hesitate to ask. Thank you again for your efforts, and I look forward to receiving your note of submission. Have a great week, Marissa," and her email signature. So what is good about this email?
Even though she watches football with you in an email, she addresses you as Dr. Martinez.
Yes. Yeah.
I think the challenge is that it's okay to be friendly, but if it's an official thing, addressing people by their titles, very important. Even though, guys watch football together, I still think that that's like a huge, that's a very important part. Giving you deadlines because you're a busy person, and this is not your number one priority in your life. Probably number, I don't know, 72 after kids' baseball game and, I don't know, getting your plumbing fixed or whatever. So I think that's really important too, to give people those guidelines. It's short and sweet. Yeah, I think, I don't know. Mindy, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. Like reading the letter, I can see that she's really clear on like the dates as well as, she got her signature. So like who it is as well as, it's full of gratitude. So I'm really impressed with it.
It is exactly full of gratitude, all those kind of things. So, of course, I'm like, Marissa, I got you. Dr. Robinson, here you go. Okay. All those things. So, yes, thank you. So, some bad emails. Real undergrads sending me emails. Not good, just in general. No title, no signature, although I removed the name because,
John
text
Doe.
language, it's just all bad, right? What about this one?
Yeah.
No. So title, which is great, but you have not responded. So what do you think would be a like for a person like me who gets like 100 emails a day, probably on average that I need to respond to? How long? And I see patients on Mondays and Fridays, so I'm not as diligent with my emails. I have 3 days a week that I'm like killing my emails. How long do you think that when you email like a doctor or somebody, a professor, how long should you give them to respond on average ish? Not 2 days, I would say.
It's usually 7 to 10 days, sometimes
100%.
days.
Exactly. Exactly. 100%. 7 to 8 days would be exactly right. And if not, you can send a gentle reminder in a much kinder way about potentially responding. And then the third email. So nice greeting, but Miss Martinez. So yeah, it's really important that you use titles. I mean, I always say that, but now I'm going to even stop saying it because I just say, oh, I don't care if people call me that. No, just because you have to get used to calling people deans, doctors, all that sort of things by proper titles, professor, dean, doctor, blah, blah, all of those things, it's just never appropriate in this, an email.
And the thing is, like, I just want to add this to, medicine is very hierarchical, and it's not that, I mean, I work in the ER and I know a lot of the attendings and residents and stuff, but also in front of patients, you don't know when you have to, you're at this point in your life that you don't know what's appropriate and not appropriate, and you may not address certainly in front of a patient. Because if you're, you know, if you're doing rounds and then you call your attending by their first name, patient would be like, who's this? Who's Denise? Is Denise my, and so I think you have to you have to be very conscientious for that. And you don't know how some people will take it because, I mean, I would say Dr. Martinez worked really hard for her titles and, uh, you know, she may be okay with it, but she may not be okay with it. And so you don't know. And so you always err on the side of, you know,
Formal. Yeah, I think that is a good point. Thank you for adding all of that, because I think you're totally right. And then the other piece on this email is that people all the time email me because we had conversations or I met them at a fair or something like that, and I have literally no idea who you are because unfortunately I met with 100 people that day. And so it's always important to email 2 or 3 sentences of, remember, I am this person from this place, and I had a great time talking about this in our conversation, to sort of jog my memory about who I'm talking to, if that's helpful as well. So that brings me back. So this is exactly harkening back to literally what was just said. Medicine has a culture. And when I talk about medicine culture, I am not talking about this as an endorsement of medicine culture, because I think some things in medicine culture need to change. But I think it's hard to play the game if you don't know the rules. And I didn't know the rules because I didn't know anything about medicine culture. And so, so one of the things about medicine is that it does have a huge hierarchy. And so this is literally the hierarchy of medicine for physicians. And so I am a senior attending physician. That means I'm a full professor. That means that I've gone from, I'm a dean, first thing, but also there's assistant professors, then next there's associate professors, and next there's full professors. So this year I became a full professor, which is the highest level of the highest part of the hierarchy. And actually, out of 200,000 faculty in the United States, there's only 300 Latina full professors, which is both cool that I'm here, but also insane. We just need to do better. And so anyways, but yeah, there's tons and tons and tons of doctors on the hierarchy. So you have a senior attendings, then you have junior attendings. And so those are doctors who are done with all of their training, but still have a little, who aren't quite as senior as the senior attendings. They still have a ways in the hierarchy to go. And everybody calls us, those two groups, by doctor, and we call most of the people on the rest of the hierarchy by their first name. Even though there's a lot of doctors on the rest of the titles. And so then you have chief residents and fellows, so people towards the end or the last year of residency or fellowship. Then you have senior residents, so that's towards the end of residency, junior residents towards the beginning or middle of residency, the intern, which is a doctor who's right out of medical school. And I'm sorry, this is the wrong slide. I usually show this to residents, but from intern up are doctors. And so as a as medical or as undergraduate students or students not in medical school, everybody from the intern up you call doctor as well, unless they say no, I insist. And then sub intern is a 4th year rotating student, 3rd year rotating students, 1st and 2nd year shadowing students, and then you have pre-meds. Can you see where pre-meds are on the hierarchy? And so
I would even add as pre-meds, now you have nurse practitioners, PAs, nurses. So even with pre-med, I would be way below that.
Of people on the team. And there's different hierarchies, but everybody's equal. Yeah, there's some, yes.
The totally. Nutritionist, the physical therapist.
And so if you come into an experience and you are super, super entitled, I want this like this, or I want this like that, as a pre-med student, it's not going to work out very well for you. And again, you're important. That's why I'm here today. But it's just important to know some of these rules. And again, not an endorsement, just you just need to know the rules. So 6, because I know I need to probably hurry it up a little bit. So lesson number 6 is the good news and bad news. The bad news is that you will fail on your journey. But the good news is that everybody fails on their journey. So you will have failures. There are things that will come up that will not work out like you thought they did, or there will be an exam or this or that. And everybody sometimes feels like that one thing or a couple things that went really wrong will completely derail your career. And that is actually not true. And so, so know that sometimes it does feel like failing, or like, gosh, I just didn't do this well. Or, I did terribly like for 2 years of undergrad. And then ended up having that upward trajectory and getting a lot of mentorship that made a huge difference in my journey to medical school. So know that let's normalize the fact that all of us will have some failures on the road, and that's okay. Which lesson number 7, the system will make you feel like you're not good enough, but you are. So there's, probably you all have heard of imposter syndrome, but there's also like something called like belonging deprivation, meaning that the system themselves sometimes makes you feel like you don't belong. But that's not true. You do. And if you don't feel like you're good enough, then I'm always like happy to sprinkle a little bit of like, no, you got this in your corner, because it's very, very common. It's being pre-med is hard, and often again that it's always a losing battle with comparison. And so you will at some point feel like this, but it's not true. You are good enough. Which brings me to another lesson. So 8 is that confidence is important. Fake it till you make it. So one of the things that actually part of medical culture that people, I didn't know about is that the people who like appeared the most confident also did the best, like on the wards. So, I went into the wards, I didn't know what I was doing. So that's your 3rd and 4th year where you're doing rotations and you're like, trying to join the team and trying to figure out what your job is on the team. And the people who just like acted like they belonged, like did so much better than the people who are just like scared and like, oh, I don't know. So I just found the people who acted like, oh, they knew what they were doing, and I just like copied them. And then I did fabulous. Like I almost honored every rotation my 3rd and 4th year of medical school, which is meaning in the top 10% of people who were chosen. And it's not because I'm so fabulous. It's because I was faking it till I make it. And then when I became a dean, I became a dean assistant or interim associate at 29 years old, which is sort of unbelievably crazy. Most of the time, you become a dean probably 50s, I would say, is probably about average. So I got there, 20 years or so early. And I was sitting at the table with Paul Rothman, who then went on to be the dean at Johns Hopkins Medical School. And, with all these senior leaders, there's probably 8 of us. And I was like, what am I doing here? And I just had to like pretend that I belonged. And then ultimately I did belong because I just could contribute. And there were things that I could offer. And so if you're not always feeling the most confident, nobody knows if you're just faking it. And that's totally fine too. Which brings me to my next lesson. So for those of you who are not in the Midwest, I usually show a slide like this on the West Coast, and people have no idea what that state is on the right. It is the state of Iowa, if you didn't know, which is in the middle of the country. And so, one of the things I ended up getting waitlisted and not getting into University of Washington, which was my one of my dreams, because I had a lot of mentors there. And I ended up going to Tufts in Boston for medical school. So I ended up going farthest away, going way to the East Coast from the left coast, and but it was a good decision. I went with my gut, and it was a really good decision. And I met a lot of great people when I was in medical school. And then I had a partner at that time who was like, do you know where I want to interview for residency? I really want to interview in Iowa. And I said, never, because I don't know where the state of Iowa is. And that sounds like a terrible idea. But I ended up interviewing there and ended up really liking it, and then ended up staying there for 15 years because I was given leadership experiences so early in my career and had really great opportunities to make a difference. And so sometimes you're like, oh, I only need to go to this school or life won't work out, or I only need to be in this one state or life won't completely work out. And then my parents, like, being with my family is important. And then my parents ended up moving to Iowa to be with me. And now we're back in California, we're back home. So it all worked out in the end. So I think sometimes it's really hard because people think that they only can do this and that will only lead them onto the right path, when the paths are it's much bigger than that. And so having some openness, you literally never know what the opportunities are in your life if you're a little more open about what that would look like, even moving to the state of Iowa. So, and then the last lesson is that you just have to do what you care about in the end. So I'm a family doctor. Family medicine, particularly on the East Coast, is beyond not prestigious. I feel like on the East Coast, being like, a left eyebrow cancer specialist is way more prestigious, something super specialized and all that kind of stuff. And so I was even told, like, oh, you're too smart to go into family medicine by a dean. And I'm like, what a compliment, but also what a backhanded compliment. Because what can be smarter than having to take care of kids and deliver babies and do geriatrics and women's health, like do a lot of, mental health care, all of those things. Like, it takes a lot to be a family doctor. But I did it because that is what I loved. And I've excelled at that. And same with my leadership. So diversity, equity, inclusion has always been really important to me. In college, I ended up creating a position and ended up being on the executive leadership, student body, board, and creating a DEI position. Then held a bunch of positions when I was in medical school and was president of a couple of those orgs. Continued to do a lot of that work when I was in residency. And so when a dean opportunity came up, so my chair, I just had finished residency, the chair of my department said, I think you should be a doctor and a faculty member here. Do you see yourself being a dean maybe in 15 years? I think, yeah, that would be perfect for you. And then 2 weeks later, I was the associate dean at the University of Iowa, which is insane. And it's because I had done all of this work, all of that time, because it was just my passion. It was just what I wanted to do. And I had more experience than any of the other faculty who were applying. And so that got me in the door early. And then I ended up becoming associate vice president of the healthcare system. So one of the top 8 leaders of a $3 billion enterprise. And like, all of those opportunities came mostly because I just kept on doing all the work that I think I'm passionate about and that I actually like. And so I think that, like, and now I'm back here being a dean in California in a school that I feel super passionate about, that is dedicated to health equity and doing underserved medicine. So like, so a lot of my leadership, rising in the system, all that kind of stuff is just simply because I've done what I've cared about. And I would say this applies to, you all, in the fact that we can tell when somebody's just done the pre-med checklist. I must do research and I must, volunteer and I must, shadow a little bit and all that kind of stuff. Like, we can tell if it's a checklist versus we can tell the people, like, for example, when I first started shadowing in a hospital, I was just kind of like wiping down tables. Was that the best use of my time? Probably not. So I switched and decided to do something else. We can tell if you're doing something that you're passionate about and that you actually care about. And you'll excel in it. You'll feel more excited about it. Hopefully we'll find a mentor in that. Like, let's say you're volunteering at a free clinic and then they write you a letter of recommendation, or even if it's, volunteering for a program for the unhoused, which doesn't have anything to do with medicine, or whatever your passions are, or if it's the research. If you're doing that, it will showcase so much better and you'll be so much happier and you'll be able to create those connections so much easier. So sometimes just being and everything counts as a pre-med student. I feel like some people don't know that. Some people will, teach English at the mosque, to kids. We are looking for people who have teaching experience. That's amazing. Some people work at a coffee shop, which means that they're good at interacting with lots of different types of people. That's amazing. Like all of those things go on your application to medical school. And so everything you do counts. But doing as much as you can of the stuff that you're passionate about will always go so much further in your life, and will always shine through. And so finding those passions is sometimes, a challenge if you don't know what those are, but continuing to pursue that, you'll be so much more successful. So this is my very cute son, who I think is very cute. And I will stop there because I think we have some time for some questions. But it's, again, you guys are amazing. This is such an amazing program, and it's such a pleasure to be here. So thank you.
All right, thank you, Dr. Martinez, for the presentations. I really love it, and I learned so much from it. So now there are some questions So the first questions that we have is, how do you stand out when you don't have an interesting background?
I don't believe it. I'm sorry, but I just don't believe it. Everybody has something that's interesting about them. And if you don't know what that is, you got to find a mentor to talk through you with it. But like, I just don't buy it. Either if you might not even think your background is interesting, but maybe your interests are interesting of the stuff that you want to do. So there's always stuff that's interesting about people. You are underselling yourself. You have more going on for you than you think that you do. And I don't buy it. So lovingly, you have more to you than that. So.
All right, so the next one is, what accomplishment are you most proud of that came from your academic journey or like career?
Yeah, being able to give back by far to students who are in my situation. It brings me so much joy. And I've seen it now because I've been around long enough that I've had plenty of students that I met at 17 years old, 18 years old now, who are physicians, attending physicians all over the country. And although I do a lot of health equity work and, policy stuff and faculty stuff and stuff with residents and, which is all stuff I love, but like being able to see that full journey in folks and knowing that maybe I've had a little bit of a hand in that is by far the most rewarding thing.
Right. Next question. Is it weird or bad that you find someone's contact information online and reach out without knowing them before? This is kind of in reference to reaching out to people and asking them questions.
No, that is the right thing to do. That is the right thing to do. And so, yeah, you have to, that is a hustle. Like you are hustling, and this is a hustle. If you're looking for a certain kind of person, maybe it's a certain kind of research lab, or maybe it's a certain faculty member or a certain doctor that you're really inspired by, and you find their contact info and you say that like in the email, like, I found it online, but I am so excited about the work that you do. This is a little bit of who I am. If you happen to have a moment, I would love to connect. Like that is the name of the game. That is what you should be doing. So, and then putting yourself in every situation that you can. So, going to pre-health fairs and connecting with folks at every pre-health fair, for the most part. There's some that are totally free to the folks who are there, but a lot of them we pay thousands of dollars to be there to talk to you. And so, and all the magic is in the person that who's in front of you, who you can connect with, where there's like tons of folks who want to help, or if there are fairs at your college or your community college or the college you want to transfer into, all of those ways to find people connect on the internet or in person or whatever, all 100% valid. And that's exactly what you should be doing.
So the next questions we have is on clinical experience. So like, how would you, find a clinical experience, or like, what's your biggest tips on how to do it?
Yeah, so there's kind of two parts to clinical experience. So one is physician shadowing. So just not having a job that you're doing, but you're just literally just shadowing a physician. Some schools value that more than others as clinical experience. So, if you're able to get some physician shadowing, sometimes there's programs that exist within your school. Sometimes there's programs that exist within your community that help get people that kind of experience. And sometimes it requires that hustle, like of reaching out to doctors in the community, reaching out to your own doctor, reaching out if you have one, or your parents' doctor, and say, I'm a pre-med. I would love to talk to you more or shadow you sometime for half a day. It is a little bit of that hustle. And sometimes people will say no, but again, it's not personal. The other piece is clinical experience that isn't shadowing. So, I love, there's a guide. Yes. And that's why you guys are like the best.
Yeah, we did a 2-hour presentation about things you could do. Medicine is highly regulated in the US and in California. So there's things you could do in like 20 hours. Like if you're interested in women's health, you could become a doula in like 28 hours. And there's a lot of things you could do as a doula. And it actually does pay well if you live in like Orange County and
I believe that.
and Bay Area and stuff. You actually like you could, you make really good money. And so there's hundreds of things you could do. Not just like shadowing. I mean, we have a thing in there about
right.
how
So
to
that
shadow.
was getting to my second point totally, is like that there's that the next is jobs. So doing scribing, doing doula, I love that so much. All of those things, you're 100% right. And you guys are experts on that too.
All right, next question. If we do not get a response after the second email, sent like weeks after the first, do we just assume they were not interested and do we drop it? How persistent should we be?
I'd give it one more shot. I would give it a third. And or if you are able, and sometimes with the system you're not. So like sometimes who their assistant is, depending on let's say it's a faculty member or a dean or that sort of thing. And if you could figure out who their assistant is, sometimes you can send an email to their assistant and be like, hey, I'm really trying to connect. Would you mind connecting me? And sometimes that's where the secret sauce is. And so I'd say 3 times, and or is there an alternative way? And again, assistants are probably one of the biggest ways.
I would say a lot of the people that we get to come and speak here, we don't know them, and we do send them more than one email. And I just say, if you're going to email someone's assistant, make sure you're very, very polite. They're not Jane or John, they're Miss or Mr., and you find out their pronouns. If you can't find it, just address them by their full name. But yeah, I'm actually usually nicer to assistants than to actual people because they could make their life they could make your life much easier. FYI.
That is literally the world's truest wisdom. I can't even tell you how much I agree with you. And I happen to love assistants, a lot of assistants. And so like in my office too, like making friends with the assistants of my colleagues that I'm connecting with is like, so I'm like, hey, can I? And also because I like them and we are friends, but like, hey, I need that one meeting with D&Ds. Would you mind squeezing me in? We're like, yes,
So in your presentation, you did mention that, in this journey, we cannot, be alone. We have to be with a mentor. So how will you ask someone to be your mentor?
So, I mean, it can happen probably multiple ways. Like some people ask, can you be my mentor? Which is fine. I find that personally, and there's different, some people have like mentor contracts and they go through this whole formal thing. That is not how I operate. And again, not to say that that's wrong either, because it works for people too. Mine is just being active about building relationships. So I've almost never said, even Dean Dees, who's like the most amazing now mentor to me, I've never said, Dean Dees, will you be my mentor? I say, I love to learn from you, and she's like, I know. So let me think of opportunities for you, like it's just that building of a relationship that over time that mentorship happens. And so you can always like formally ask, I don't know if you can define the relationship, and do a DTF, or you can just have a relationship and know that that's your mentor, if that makes sense.
Right. Next question. How did you choose the medical schools you wanted to apply to?
Yeah, so I had mentorship to help with that because I didn't know. And I felt bad one time. Like I met a student at a fair at UC Davis, which is an amazing fair, by the way. And this person told me about them. They're like, oh, I'm applying the cycle. I'm like, oh yeah, what schools do you apply to? And every single school that they applied to, they had almost no shot of getting into, not because of who they were, it's because they weren't a resident of that state. Like the schools that they chose are state schools that take like some state schools like Iowa, a third of the class is out of state. So you actually have a decent shot at that state school. There's some state schools like the Cali schools, Hawaii, Colorado, like there's some state schools that take almost no out of state people. And they chose like 12 of those schools that like take 2 people out of state a year. So just by numbers, they have nearly no shot of getting in. And so, looking at the MSAR, which is a tool, I'm sure you all talk about that as well, where you can look at what percentage of in-state, out-of-state, all of those types of things is helpful. You want a well-rounded list, some dream schools, some, potential safety schools, although safety now is always challenging, but, the schools that you think you might have the best shot at based on location or, where you're from and all that kind of stuff. But it's also helpful to sometimes have a list. And so I kind of created a list and then I got some feedback from folks. I think mission fit is really important. So I ended up choosing some schools that I felt like were more based on the mission of that, what I was interested in.
Right. So if for example, UCR has a mission of serving Inland Empire, and in your letter or your application, you write that you want to be, I don't know, you want to help people in San Diego. Actually, San Diego is pretty close. Let's say San Francisco, probably should be careful with that. So
you're 100% right. Like,
and
literally.
there's this really cool invention called the internet, and medical schools spend a lot of time putting that stuff on their website. So you don't even need to like buy the MSAR. You just take a look at it, and they'll put that information on there. Like I had somebody who was a California resident that was applying to University of Arkansas. I'm like, you're not going to get in because they take like only 2 people from out of state, literally. And they'll put that on their website that we only want people from Arkansas. So, and you have no connection. Like if you say, oh, my granddaddy lives in Arkansas, okay, but yeah, they probably couldn't even pick Arkansas. But that's a little different.
That is true.
But also getting advice from people like your friends are some of the, I mean, your classmates are probably not the best people to give you advice because they're, maybe somebody's gone through it or other types of things. But yeah, you guys ask the wrong people advice, I personally think, or read blogs too much.
Yeah, Reddit and Student Doctor Network can be pretty rough. And don't ever ask for advice like, I have these stats, will I get in? Like, that is the blind leading the blind. Like, don't do that ever.
So we did mention a little bit about networking and how to like sell yourself when you're at conference. So how did you best learn to sell yourself? Is it through books or mentors? So how do you do it?
I think honestly, it's fine. I think a lot of my life has been finding the people that I admire the most for their skills and copying them. And so, and now, I mean, there's so much more stuff like on the internet as well about networking and how to do that well. But a lot of it was finding folks that I admired. And then I was very lucky too. I had one of my mentors was an executive dean, Donna Hammond, and especially after high-powered meetings, we'd be sitting in some of those early meetings when I first became a dean, and she would be like, who's this? Who's this? Why would you say this? Why would you ask this question? Why did they ask this question? And sort of explain the dynamics of a meeting to me, which was like gold. But not everybody has that level of that level of help. But I don't think it's as hard as people think it is. I think the hardest thing is just getting over yourself and the willingness to put yourself out there and ask good questions in a positive way. Honestly, and knowing your own story. Again, the stuff that we already talked about, like it's not that hard but it feels hard if you've just never done it. It's just getting over that, if that makes sense.
All right, next question. I am 29, not me, somebody in the audience, and a first semester nursing student, but considering switching to medicine. Do admissions committees see med school applicants in their 30s as capable as those who are much younger?
100%. I think that, there's definitely students who go into medical school straight through. I would say it feels rarer and rarer now these days. I think folks who have lived a little more life and have a little more life experience tend to be some of the applicants we love the most, because you have even a stronger sense of the why, and you have a lot of like life under your belt and experiences that are often super diverse, but also very contributory to what you're doing. So that we definitely have students in their 30s who start medical school, and that is not an issue, and that is common throughout the US, I would say. So 100%. We have students in their 40s too sometimes. I know there's schools that have, I don't know if anybody at UCR is higher older than that. There could be, if I don't know, I might not know, but those things happen, and I think it's not a bad thing. Absolutely.
We've had people that are in their 50s.
Or 50s, yeah.
We had somebody who started at 50. We had another person who was 47 after being a mechanic for 20 years and owning his own business. That is now an ER doctor in Philadelphia.
Love that. Love it.
And they're actually making a TV show about his life.
Also love it. And hopefully getting paid for that. That's awesome.
Yeah. It's he said it's a process. It's a learning process.
All right, so our next questions from the attendee is, when do I start preparing for the MCAT? Like, how do I make sure that I crack the MCAT? Because sometimes I feel incompetent.
Oh, well, I'm sorry that you feel that way. And it's, for good or for bad, it's not an uncommon feeling. And the MCAT's a beast. It's a beast. Even for folks who say it was not easy, I'm like, you're lying, you liars. I think it's a hard thing. So, so it depends. For every person's a little bit different. Once you've finished all of your, pre-med recs that are, or the vast majority of them that are going to be covered on the MCAT. My advice is that I strongly recommend people take like a clean MCAT before they've done a ton of studying. They just take one and kind of see where you're at. If you're in like the low 400s, way lower, then it's going to take a much longer time. It doesn't mean that you're going to do terrible. It's just showing you where your starting place is. If you're starting at a 500, that's not so bad. That's a really like high starting place. But having that knowledge, at least for me, when I was in that summer program, I took a full-length MCAT to start off with, and I like had a strong idea of at least where I was starting from. And I think that is a really helpful space. And then for every person, then it varies on how long it's going to take them to kind of get to where they need to be competitive. And there's some really amazing on the AAMC website. There's some really amazing tools that show you, like what MCAT level gets people to be successful in medical school, and it's much lower than what a lot of people think. like a lot lower than a lot of people think, and much lower than the average mean of medical school. That shows you that you would actually be successful in the curriculum. Oh, and good. I know you guys had schools on this as
Yeah,
well.
we've done probably close to, I think, 18 hours of MCAT. We
So
have people that are MCAT experts that study it, write manuals for it. Also what to do your first and second year. You're taking those intro classes, how you could actually prepare for the MCAT.
love it.
It's not a 30-second bit. It's a couple hours of research. And plus, Dr. Martinez probably took the old MCAT, right?
Yeah, I took the old MCAT. Absolutely.
All right, next question. Are shadowing PAs just as good as shadowing doctors, or are doctors more preferred, or a mix of both?
I think PAs are amazing. And so if you have the opportunity to shadow PA, I think that's fabulous. I would say it varies by medical school. I would say some medical schools still, that I'm aware of, still value DO schools certainly value if you've shadowed a DO physician, and that's important to them typically, or have experience with a DO physician. I think that it depends on the medical school, but some medical schools really do value having some physician shadowing as well, just because every person on the team plays a slightly different role. And again, there, as you guys already mentioned, that there's that difference between, shadowing, which some schools like actually shadowing, which can be hard to get sometimes, and then clinical experience, which there's lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of ways to get really good, clinical experience. But if there are certain schools that you're interested in, that, like maybe you're like, if you live in inland Southern California and you're really interested in going to UCR, I would reach out to the admissions coordinator, or, one of the folks at the medical schools that you are interested in, and ask them what are some of their thoughts and preferences around that.
So our next question is it okay to do a bachelor and master together, like a 3 to 2 year program, then apply to medical school?
Oh yeah, that's great. Totally. If you like it and that's what you want to do, that's fabulous. This is not exactly related, but sometimes people apply, like if they're doing a master's program or a post-bac, they apply at the beginning of it. If it's, and this is probably not the situation for this particular question, but if they're trying to improve, their application to get into medical school, they potentially want to submit they're trying to submit their application prior to completing that degree, but then all of the transcripts and all of the work that you've done won't be on your application to medical school. So sometimes be aware of that. So let's say if you do like a bachelor's program, but because you want it to be part of your enhancement and to get in, you need to usually wait until you're done with it, or at least have 1 year of it done, so that shows up on your application for medical school. That's sort of just a side note.
All right, another question. Do you know any medical schools you think we have more of a chance to get into in New York?
It kind of depends. So there's, and with every state, so just like some general thoughts around this. With every state, there are state schools that are going to have preferences to people who are in state. And so obviously that's always the best idea, is to apply to state schools, because you often, will have preferred treatment if you are from that state. So that's always a valuable thing. I know at Iowa, 300 people, typically around 300 people applied for 100 spots for the in-state. So it was like a 3-to-1. Versus like thousands of people who applied for the 50 out-of-state spots. And so those ratios can be crazy, depend on that. So that's always important. The next thing is that private schools, can usually take students from all over the country because they don't have in-state or out-of-state requirements. And so then you looking at the websites, looking at their means, looking about the kind of students that they're interested in, looking at their mission fit is like the next thing to see about potentially getting in. I guess that's my general thoughts around that.
All right, so our next question is, if we have applied twice to medical school and have not been successful, and now we'll really make our application much, much better, can we still apply to school, say only apply to their school like twice?
That is a question for the individual medical schools. So yeah, every medical school might have different policies around that. Some people it's two, sometimes it's three, sometimes it's four. But yeah, reaching out and with reapplication, like it's not uncommon for people to apply twice. Like that is not completely uncommon. But the biggest thing that we look at for on the admissions committee for folks who are applying the second time is or third time is that what have they done differently. And so it's critical that you get feedback from people who from the schools that you applied to. If you're able to talk to one of the admissions officers and say, what is the feedback, like what specifically do you feel like was lacking on your application, and then you need to go change it. You can't submit the same exact letters with the same exact dates on it from the prior applications. You really do need a refresh every single time. You need a refresh of all the activities that you're doing. You need to be getting that critical feedback from admissions officers to see what you need to change or update in your application, and do it.
All right. Next question. When it comes to extracurriculars, how do you make sure not to spread yourself too thin while still passionately working on all of the things you love?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely folks, and again, I can speak more specifically about UCR. I would say, we love seeing students who have like variety of interests and do a million things, but if your grades are suffering, that's not okay. First and foremost. The second thing is that I think in general, at least that my current institution, if we see a lot of hours and dedication in one space, let's say you do 1,000 hours and you work for this free clinic that you're super passionate about and can talk about it, and then you get a letter of recommendation from that clinic, that is more powerful to us than 50 hours in a million other things. And so you just have to be careful, like what is bringing you joy, what is spreading you too thin, what is the stuff that you're really passionate about and they can really dedicate a little bit more time into. And the only person who can answer those questions are you. But I would be careful about doing a lot of little things, okay, and instead of one thing that you are like really did well, if that makes sense. That's my personal preference.
All right, so the next question is, I am an international student currently in my second year. I also have to take the MCAT. I have a lot of friends who are planning to take a gap year and take the MCAT, but not sure being an international student if I would be able to take a gap year. However, I have also heard that there's a lot classes I am currently doing will overlap with the content that will be on the MCAT. Would you recommend taking a gap year or doing it just with my college classes?
Well, that was a big question. I'm just looking real quick at honestly, I'm gonna just say I am not an expert, and maybe you guys already have had experts on this space about international students and the best way to apply, because that's a whole different it's a whole different thing, because it is just a whole different thing. There aren't as many schools that take international students, and the spots are a little bit more limited. And so I apologize that I do not have great advice around that, because I haven't worked at schools that do take international students before. So I don't have a lot of good advice around that.
Yeah, I would just say look at what school you're going to have an international office, because I think it's a challenge with the student visa. So if you're like studying for like there's things that they could help you with in doing that, but those people are experts at that, and I'm not really sure personally, but I know there's ways that you can still stay in the US. I think after you graduate, you have up to 6 months to plan or whatever you want to do. Either, and so, but again, those are like some very, very specific things that international offices. Like if you're an international student, there's an office at your school, and they could do that. And in terms of the MCAT, like I would just say that as someone who English is not their first language, the MCAT is a beast, and so try not to do too much. So if you're taking biochem and English and you're doing research and you're volunteering at the soup kitchen, and I just think the MCAT is not going to be in that edition because I don't know. I mean, I could just tell you that some, it's hard, it's challenging, you know. So I'm just gonna throw that out there. But I guess that, but that's such a personal question that I wouldn't know. But also, like the international office would like definitely have more information for you to be able to stay here and study for the MCAT and all that good stuff.
Right. Next question. Will medical schools look at my research differently if it was independent research under a professor mentor rather than in a professor's lab?
No, so it doesn't, honestly, my experience with the vast majority of medical schools is that there's less interest in what type of research you've done, other than the fact that hopefully you've enjoyed it and can talk about it with a little bit of enthusiasm. Then like, is it lab research or bench research or, pipetting research, or, some people work in psychology stuff. Some people do surveys with, the unhoused. Some people do a whole bunch of different things and have mentors who assist in that research process that has nothing to do with specifically like being in the lab. And that's totally fine. And it doesn't have to be biomedical research or, anything like that. That's absolutely not necessary.
So just another question that I have is, how do you know that someone is going off of like the checklist for like when they apply in? Because from my understanding, that we need, like the volunteering, the shadowing, clinical experience, leadership, and research. So how will you say that someone is doing that, but we need that, and how you differentiate between, like
Yeah, I think we can, I mean, I maybe not 100%, but I think when you're reading an application, you can at least, we assume we can tell whether or not somebody is doing it because like, it's just a level of passion and interest that they're able to talk about it. And then oftentimes too, like if somebody had a lot of uh, um, experience in one particular area and then don't even get like a letter of recommendation from that person if it was one particular piece, then we're like, how well did they do in this, and how much do they actually like it, and how much did their person who was supervising thought that they did well in it, and all of those things are better if you like it. So let's say again, you want to do research, but let's say like I hate pipetting and I hate the lab, like, and thank God that we have people that do love that, but it's not my thing. But talking to people, working in the clinic, doing patient interviews, like I would be so much more passionate. I know there's some studies around, looking at data around working with underserved, like that is much more my passion. And so it's still research, but there is like a million ways you can do it. Are you doing something you're more interested in or less interested in? And those are the ways, like you can still do the list, but do it in the way that makes you the happiest. Like we like having people who have teaching experience. If you're like, I don't want to be a tutor, I don't want to be a TA, fine. Teach kids how to play basketball. Perfect. You love it. It's something you enjoy. You like sports. It's a skill. You're teaching people how to do stuff. Great. Check. But it's taking some of the stuff that you need on your resume, but doing it in the way that would be most fulfilling to you or that you're most interested in. Because otherwise it just comes off as I did this and I did that. And the letters come off that way too. Sometimes like they showed up, they did okay. And you're like, oh, I don't think they like this at all, so.
The only thing that I would add is people like Dr. Martinez are very, 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 very smart, and they've done this for a long time. And they don't get to be in these places willy-nilly, but also they've experienced it, so they know how things are. And so, but obviously, but honestly, they're very smart people, so they know. um so yeah, they're smart people.
We had
uh,
another question come through.
Last question so that
Last
Dr.
question.
Martinez could go.
How much does a lower MCAT impact our application if the rest of our application is really good?
Depends on the school, but I would say at UCR, it doesn't matter. As long as, again, every school is different. Some schools really weigh heavily on the MCAT. In my opinion, that's horrible. Again, there's calculators online that show like at what level of MCAT, which is actually a little bit below a 400, 500, that shows that people can be successful in medical school. 500 is typically what we see folks that they're going to solidly pass medical school classes, they're going to solidly pass step one. But some people, it's 498. But every medical school is different as what that threshold is. I wish, kind of like step one in medical school, that MCAT was pass fail. I wish it was like that in some ways, because I feel like, okay, we've proven that they can get through medical school, great, But honestly, if people are well-rounded and their MCAT just might not be the highest thing in the world, many schools who do what we'd call true holistic admissions, meaning that they're looking at the whole picture of the person, then hopefully that's not a huge impact. Some schools are better than that at others, I won't lie. Some schools care more about the stats than others. But it also depends a little bit. Like, again, talk to somebody in admissions of the school that you're interested in, get some feedback. I know I talk to a lot of students about this, talking about their application, talking about their stats, to give them like more personal advice. But that's like my general advice, that things balance out. A lot of schools are just looking for, who are you, what are your passions, and will you be successful getting through medical school and successful passing your board exams?
Well, I think we're gonna let you go because we kept you longer than we're supposed to. I put that chart that you talked about and also more data. You guys could download and spend your Saturday looking at it. Thank you again for coming today, and hopefully you could get to your son's baseball game. No,
it's totally fine. This has been a fun morning, and again, the work that you do is just like amazing, and obviously reaps rewards for thousands of students, I'm sure. So thank you for everything that you do, and thanks for having me.
thank you.